Now, here was a game that I had set up, and I had gone to great lengths to set this whole thing up, where it was kind of like a story within the D&D story in which I was telling. Um, and I used a monster in it, more specifically a dragon, and it was one of the first times I had used a dragon, but mostly as a plot device. Um, to have like a type of game mechanic. And to be more specific, here's the setting, right? You got three adventurers who I'll get into in just a bit. One of them was me because I couldn't find a third player, and I'm normally really good about making an NPC who's not going to give really anything away. As far as me being the DM as well. So we've all kind of adapted that. Mostly because our homebrew campaign of Alea is a commingling of three different GMs. We all take turns flushing out the world together and telling stories in our homebrew campaign. And so it's really a collaboration of three different, DMs. Anyways, the setting is this. So, three adventurers are escorting a caravan, more specifically, are escorting a old man and his granddaughter. The old man just so happens to be this wizard who is taking this incredibly mystical book to be locked up at the next town over in this mystic vault that is pretty much guarded by a collaboration of different wizards for items that are just kind of too powerful to be roaming around out there. And his granddaughter is going along with him because she kind of wants to see the place, and he got permission for it. And she turned out to have some kind of talents herself, and he kind of wants to inspire her. So the adventuring party who is guarding these individuals, inevitably through one reason or another, mostly the girl who's used to her grandfather telling her bedtime stories, and does not receive one the night that the caravan has to stop by the side of the trail, as it is a 2-day trip, and opens the book with the characters around. Unbeknownst to them that it is a magical book, they are sucked in, and they are sucked into this world within this fairy tale book, which is a floating castle in the sky, high above these undescript lands. And there's a dragon guarding the castle, and monsters within the castle, and the dragon, it's a red dragon, but it's used for the purposes in the particular game mechanic to be at certain points in locations around the castle at certain intervals at time in time. So once the characters have made their round, then the dragon makes his round. And so the dragon will move from, north to west, west to south, south to east. It'll circle around the castle, and depending on where it is, if the characters are in its line of sight in the particular section that it is in, they have to hide before it gets there. So, let's say they're somewhere in the west, and the dragon is approaching from the north, and they know it's at the north right now. Their next round, they have to try and find a place to temporarily hide while the dragon passes by, or else they get incinerated. So, it was just an extra game mechanic that I was playing around with. And so, uh, I get propositioned by David to have all of our characters, because David was really curious to see what would happen if all of our characters were Minotaurs. I'm like, you know what? That's fine by me. I'm kind of curious myself. I thought it was kind of a cool idea. And Jessie was our other player, and she thought the idea of being like Minotaurs, especially being like Minotaur siblings, which was the idea that she came up with, would be kind of cool. And so we, of course, get sucked into this book, as the Belrose family is the overall family name that we went with. I was playing Oren Belrose. She was playing Argo Belrose, and then David went with Barbata Belrose. Yeah, I think that's what his name was. And so we all get sucked into this book, and a lot of really cool shit happens within this story. I won't go over everything because just be here forever, just like I was with my ninja story, and I kind of want to keep this one a bit short. But me and Jessie end up running through most of this because, unfortunately, the main point to this in particular story is that David ends up dying very early on, and he kind of got really bummed out, and I was like kind of trying to fudge it a bit. I was like, well, you know, if we get through this, which I was not at all sure that we would after he had died, I was like, holy fuck, this is going to be a long shot and a half. But I said to myself, okay, maybe I can spin this, and I told David, well, maybe if we get through this storybook, this one-shotter, and escape the storybook, then you'll be fine on the outside world, because it was more of like, we did in fact get sucked in, but the reason for why he died, which I'll go into in a minute, had to do with the fact that we had found out that we had been sucked into a dream. So our unconscious bodies were in the real world, and then this world just seemed as real as can be. But in fact, it was our unconscious dream states, and we were playing as our dream selves. But there were a lot of cool moments. You know, there was this moment in the library with this blind ogre, and we had to sneak past the blind ogre as these minotaurs in this library while simultaneously ducking this dragon between the bookshelves, because the back of the library was just demolished, and there was a big hole in the back of the library which you could see into, and that got all, you know, messed up, and the dragon like blew fire in there and incinerated the ogre and lit the entire goddamn library on fire, and we had to escape. And there was also this really cool moment where I had put in a giant viper snake in this greenhouse across the courtyard from this waterfall, and it was designed to have him launch out at the individuals who were playing, like springboard himself forward towards the players once they had decided to cross this particular courtyard. And it would have been okay with the three of us, even if somebody got hit. You know, they didn't make their roll and the snake got them, but like at this point in time, it was just me and Jessie, and I knew it was coming, and I knew I couldn't avoid it. And even though I knew it was coming, I was like, oh my god, what the hell am I going to do? And out of desperation, there was this really cool moment where I was just like, fuck it, and I ran out to the court, I ran out in the courtyard, and I just threw my axe and I rolled for it, and sure enough, I got it. It was like just, you know, 20 on the fucking roll, and it was fantastic, right? 20 on my initiative to fucking throw this thing, and I got it, right? And so you have this really cool man in the iron mask moment where I threw this axe through the waterfall, and it went in between the snake's mouth and like cut the upper part of its head off, and it was awesome. That was my big moment of shining, right? Um, but we had a really hard time getting through the whole thing because towards the beginning, after David had learned that we were in fact dreaming, his character Barbata found out that we were in fact dreaming, and I shit you not, he looks up at me and he looks at Jesse and he's like, "Ah, I got your number. I figured it out." And I'm like, okay. And he's like, before I could say anything, he picks up his dice and he's like, my character says, "I'll see you guys on the other side," and he turns around and runs to jump out the window, and he rolls it. I'm like, what? And Jesse's like, what? And me and Jesse's characters literally have this moment where they watch their brother in shock and awe. Just this moment where they just both freeze, where their brother has turned right around and has jumped out this window, and they're just like, I can't believe that just happened. Did that really just fucking happen? And he's like, yeah. It's like, he's like, "I'll see you on the other side," and he jumps out the window. I'm like, wow, really, man? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my fucking god. Okay, well, your character starts falling and falling until he realizes that he has not in fact stopped falling, because David had explained this to me, that he had figured it out, right? Because I had to ask him, right? And he was like, yeah, that's right, it's a dream, so if I shock myself out of the dream, I'll be back in the real world, and I've beaten you, sir. I'm like, that beats the entire purpose of the whole game that I set forth. I didn't put all this shit into play just for that. That's not how this works. And I'm like, your character continues to fall and fall until he realizes that he's not waking up. And he opens his eyes long enough. Basically, his character opens his eyes long enough to see that this plan was folly. And I'm like, and your character falls to his death, man. It's like the scene in Wile E. Coyote where he just falls, and Wile E. Coyote's just like, yeah, I've got this figured out, like, or it's like this really long way down where he's just spread out eagle, and he's like, And sure enough, he doesn't wake up. He falls all the way down, and it looks like a scene. I basically say to David, it looks like the scene from Wile E. Coyote where you just fall down until neither one of your siblings can see you anymore, and there's just this little poof ring of smoke at the bottom as you hit the ground and die. He's like, what the fuck? I'm like, what the fuck, man? Did you really think that was the key component of figuring out the game? He's like, yeah! Like, dude, you just killed yourself! And he got really pissed off and kind of bummed about that. But I mean, he committed suicide. Why would that be your first thought? But needless to say, we did in fact get past the one-shotter, and we got back to the real world, and it basically saved Barbata's soul from being trapped in the fairy tale book forever, so he ended up fine. But he did, in fact, jump off the floating castle and commit technical suicide. It's kind of funny now that I think about it.